Marcus was driving home with his daughter when he saw a car crash. A woman was trapped inside with bad men trying to take her. He could drive away and be safe. But Marcus chose to help. That choice changed everything. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The screech of tires on asphalt pierced the desert silence as Marcus Thompson slammed his brakes, watching in horror as the black SUV ahead of him flipped 3 times before coming to rest on its roof. Steam hissed from the wreckage, and the acrid smell of burning rubber filled the scorching Arizona air. Marcus's weathered hands gripped the steering wheel of his pickup truck, his heart pounding. At 42, he'd seen enough of life's cruel surprises to know that hesitation could mean the difference between life and death. Behind him, his 8-year-old daughter Emma stirred in her car seat. "Daddy, what happened?" Emma's sleepy voice carried the innocent concern that only children possess. "Stay in the truck, sweetheart. Daddy needs to help someone." Marcus's voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed the urgency he felt. He'd been driving back from Emma's weekend visit to her grandmother when this nightmare unfolded on the lonely desert highway. As he approached the overturned vehicle, Marcus could hear muffled voices, and something that made his blood run cold. These weren't cries for help. These were threats. "Get her out of there. The boss wants her alive," a gruff voice commanded. Marcus crouched behind a large boulder, his construction worker instincts kicking in. Through the spider-webbed rear window, he could see a woman in an expensive business suit, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. She was conscious but trapped, her seatbelt jammed. 2 men in dark clothing were trying to extract her from the wreckage, their movements urgent and violent. This wasn't an accident. This was a kidnapping gone wrong. Alexandra Sterling had always prided herself on being in control. As the 35-year-old CEO of Sterling Industries, a multi-billion-dollar tech company, she commanded boardrooms with the same precision she used to negotiate international deals. But hanging upside down in a twisted metal cage, with her kidnappers arguing about their next move, control felt like a distant memory. "The helicopter's 20 minutes out," one of the men said, checking his watch. "We need to get her clear of this wreck." Alexandra's mind raced. She'd received death threats before, occupational hazard of being one of the youngest female CEOs in the Fortune 500. But she'd never imagined it would come to this. Her security detail was supposed to be the best money could buy. How had they gotten to her? Through the haze of her concussion, she saw a figure moving in the rocks. For a moment, hope fluttered in her chest. Then reality crashed back. It was probably another kidnapper. Marcus watched from his hiding spot, calculating his options. He was outnumbered, outgunned, and had his daughter to think about. The smart thing would be to drive away and call the police. But the woman's eyes, even from this distance, he could see the terror and determination warring in them. And something deeper called to him, a voice that sounded remarkably like his late wife's. "Sometimes, Marcus," Sarah had said during her final days in the hospital, "being a good man means making the hard choice, not the safe one." He thought of Emma asleep in his truck. What kind of father would he be if he drove past someone in need? What kind of man? Marcus made his choice. Moving with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd spent years in construction sites where one wrong step could be fatal, Marcus circled around the wreckage. He'd been a Marine before he'd become a single father, and some skills never left you. The first kidnapper never saw him coming. Marcus's calloused hand clamped over the man's mouth while his other arm locked around his throat. The man struggled for a few seconds before going limp. Marcus dragged him behind the vehicle and zip-tied his hands with ties from his work truck. The second kidnapper was more alert. As Marcus approached, the man spun around, raising his weapon. "Don't move," the kidnapper shouted. But Marcus was already moving, diving low as the gun discharged. The bullet whistled past his ear as he tackled the man around the waist. They hit the ground hard, rolling in the desert dust. The kidnapper was younger, faster, but Marcus had something his opponent didn't: everything to lose. The struggle was brief and violent. When it ended, Marcus stood over the unconscious kidnapper, breathing hard, a growing red stain on his shoulder where the bullet had grazed him. "Please," came a voice from inside the wreckage. "Help me." Marcus peered through the shattered window at the trapped woman. Her dark hair was streaked with blood, but her green eyes were alert and focused. "I'm going to get you out of there," he said, his voice gentle despite the circumstances. "What's your name?" "Alexandra. Alexandra Sterling." She managed a weak smile. "And you are?" "Marcus Thompson." "Just hold on, Alexandra. I've got you." Using tools from his pickup, Marcus carefully cut through the twisted seatbelt that held Alexandra trapped. His movements were precise, professional, the hands of someone who'd spent years building and fixing things. "You're bleeding," Alexandra observed as he worked, noticing the wound on his shoulder. "It's nothing," Marcus replied, though the pain was considerable. "Can you move your legs?" Alexandra tested her limbs carefully. "I think so. Nothing feels broken." As Marcus helped her from the wreckage, Alexandra got her first clear look at her rescuer. He was tall and lean, with graying hair at his temples and kind eyes that spoke of someone who'd seen both joy and sorrow. His clothes were simple, jeans and a flannel shirt, but there was a dignity in his bearing that made her think of her own father, who'd built his first company with nothing but determination and calloused hands. "Thank you," she said simply. But the words felt inadequate for what this stranger had done. "We need to get out of here," Marcus replied, scanning the horizon. They mentioned a helicopter. It was then that Alexandra truly understood what had happened. This man, this stranger, had risked his life for her. He'd been shot defending her. And he was asking for nothing in return. "Your daughter," she said suddenly, remembering the small face she'd glimpsed in the truck. "Is she safe?" Marcus's expression softened. "Emma's in my truck. She's..." He paused, the weight of what he'd just put his daughter through hitting him. "She's all I have." As they made their way to Marcus's truck, Alexandra found herself studying the man who'd saved her life. There was something about him that reminded her of her father. Not the polished businessman he'd become, but the young man in the old photographs, the one who'd started with nothing and built an empire through sheer will and kindness to others. Emma was awake when they reached the truck, her wide brown eyes taking in the scene with the startling perceptiveness of children. "Daddy, you're hurt," she said, reaching for her father. "I'm okay, sweetheart." Marcus's voice transformed when he spoke to his daughter, becoming gentler, warmer. "This is Miss Alexandra. She was in a car accident, and we're going to help her get somewhere safe." Emma studied Alexandra with the frank curiosity of an 8-year-old. "You have pretty hair even though it's messy." Despite everything, Alexandra laughed. "Thank you, Emma. That's very kind of you to say." As they drove toward town, Emma chattering quietly in the back seat while Marcus focused on the road, Alexandra found herself thinking about the strange turns life could take. This morning she'd been preparing for the most important board meeting of her career. Now she was fleeing kidnappers with a construction worker and his daughter, and somehow feeling safer than she had in years. "Why did you do it?" she asked Marcus quietly. "Do what?" "Risk your life for a complete stranger. Risk leaving your daughter without a father." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the empty road ahead. "My wife died 3 years ago," he said finally. "Cancer. Near the end, she made me promise something." He glanced in the rearview mirror at Emma, who was now dozing again. "She made me promise to teach Emma that there are still good people in the world. People who do the right thing even when it's hard. Even when it's dangerous." His voice grew softer. "How could I teach her that if I wasn't willing to live it?" Alexandra felt something shift inside her chest, a warmth she hadn't experienced in years of corporate battles and boardroom politics. At the police station, as Alexandra gave her statement and Marcus received medical attention for his wound, the reality of their different worlds began to reassert itself. Alexandra's assistant arrived with a security team, her phone buzzed with urgent messages from board members, and the machinery of her high-powered life kicked back into gear. But as she watched Marcus patiently answer Emma's questions about why the police needed to talk to them, she couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed. "Miss Sterling?" Detective Rodriguez interrupted her thoughts. "We've got the preliminary report on your kidnappers. This was a sophisticated operation. Someone with serious resources wanted you taken alive." Alexandra nodded absently, her attention still on Marcus and Emma. The little girl had fallen asleep against her father's good shoulder while he filled out paperwork one-handed, his injured arm in a sling. "We'll need you both available for follow-up questions," the detective continued. "Mr. Thompson's testimony will be crucial for prosecution." "Of course," Alexandra said. "Whatever you need." But as she watched Marcus gently wake his daughter and prepare to leave, she realized she wasn't ready to say goodbye. Not yet. The next morning, Marcus was fixing breakfast for Emma when his phone rang. He didn't recognize the number. "Hello? Marcus? This is Alexandra Sterling." He almost dropped the phone. After yesterday's events, she seemed like someone from another world, which he supposed she was. "Miss Sterling. How are you feeling?" "Better, thanks to you." There was a pause. "Marcus, I know this might sound strange, but I'd like to ask you something. Are you happy with your current job?" Marcus glanced around his modest kitchen at the bills stacked on the counter and Emma's school notices held to the refrigerator with magnets. Happy wasn't exactly the word he'd use, but it was honest work, and it paid enough to keep Emma fed and clothed. "It's a job," he said carefully. "I'd like to offer you something different. Head of security for Sterling Industries. It would mean relocating to San Francisco, but the salary would be..." She named a figure that made Marcus sit down hard. "Miss Sterling, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not qualified for that kind of position. You saved my life from professional kidnappers using nothing but quick thinking and courage. I'd say you're overqualified." Her voice grew warmer. "Marcus, yesterday you showed me something I'd forgotten existed. Genuine goodness. I need someone I can trust completely, and I can't think of anyone more trustworthy than a man who'd risk his life for a stranger." Marcus looked at Emma, who was carefully arranging her cereal by color, completely absorbed in her task. A job like that would mean opportunities for her he could never provide otherwise. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. But Marcus, this isn't charity. You saved my life, but more than that, you reminded me why I wanted to build something meaningful in the first place. I need that reminder around." 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in the lobby of Sterling Industries' San Francisco headquarters, Emma's hand clutched firmly in his own. The building was all glass and steel, reaching impossibly high into the California sky, and for a moment he wondered what he'd gotten them into. "Daddy, it's like a castle," Emma breathed, her eyes wide as she took in the soaring atrium. "Mr. Thompson?" A young woman in an elegant suit approached them. "I'm Jennifer, Miss Sterling's assistant. She's waiting for you in her office." The elevator ride to the 42nd floor was silent except for Emma's occasional gasps of delight as they rose above the city. When the doors opened, Alexandra Sterling was waiting for them. She looked different than she had in the desert, polished, professional, every inch the powerful CEO. But when she smiled at Emma, Marcus saw the same woman who had thanked the 8-year-old for complimenting her messy hair. "Emma, how do you like San Francisco so far?" "It's really tall," Emma replied solemnly, making Alexandra laugh. "It is indeed. Would you like to see the view from my office?" As Emma pressed her face to the floor-to-ceiling windows, marveling at the city spread out below, Alexandra turned to Marcus. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. "I know this is a big change." Marcus nodded, still feeling slightly overwhelmed. "The apartment you arranged is beautiful. Emma loves her new school." "Good. That's what matters." Alexandra's expression grew more serious. "Marcus, I want you to understand something. This job, this opportunity, it's not about what happened in the desert. It's about who you are. The kind of man who would risk everything for a stranger is exactly the kind of man I need running security for my company." She gestured toward Emma, who was now attempting to count the cars visible on the street far below. "But more than that, you're the kind of man who's raised a daughter who sees the good in the world, even after losing her mother so young. That tells me more about your character than any resume ever could." The first months in San Francisco were an adjustment for both Marcus and Emma. While Emma threw herself into her new school with the resilience of childhood, Marcus found himself navigating corporate politics and high-stakes security concerns that were far removed from his construction site experiences. But Alexandra had been right about his qualifications. His military background, combined with his natural protective instincts and ability to read people, made him surprisingly effective at his new role. He quickly identified weaknesses in the company's security protocols and implemented changes that impressed even the most skeptical board members. More importantly, his presence seemed to have a calming effect on Alexandra herself. Marcus noticed that she was working fewer 18-hour days, taking time for actual lunch breaks, and showing more patience with her staff. "You know," she said one evening as they reviewed security reports in her office while Emma did homework in the adjoining conference room, "I'd forgotten what it was like to have someone around who wasn't trying to get something from me." Marcus looked up from the report he was reading. "What do you mean?" "Everyone wants something, Marcus. Investors want returns, employees want promotions, board members want control. Even friends." She shrugged. "Sometimes I wonder if they care about Alexandra or just about what CEO Alexandra can do for them." "That sounds lonely." Alexandra was quiet for a moment. "It is. But you and Emma, you treat me like I'm just a person. Do you know how rare that is in my world?" Through the glass wall of the conference room, they could see Emma frowning over a math problem, her tongue poking out in concentration just like her father's did when he was focused. "She's lucky to have you as a father," Alexandra said softly. "I'm lucky to have her as a daughter." As spring turned to summer, the relationship between Marcus and Alexandra began to shift in ways neither of them had expected. It started with small things. Alexandra remembering that Marcus liked his coffee black, Marcus ensuring Alexandra's favorite pastries were available during long board meetings, both of them looking forward to their daily security briefings more than either cared to admit. Emma, with the uncanny perception of children, noticed before either adult did. "Daddy," she said one evening as Marcus tucked her into bed in their new apartment, "do you like Miss Alexandra?" Marcus paused in the middle of adjusting her blankets. "Of course I like her, sweetheart. She's our friend." "No, Daddy." Emma's voice carried the exaggerated patience of an 8-year-old explaining something obvious to a dense adult. "Do you like her? Like how you liked Mommy?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He sat down heavily on the edge of Emma's bed, his mind reeling. "Emma? It's okay, Daddy. I think Miss Alexandra likes you too. She smiles different when you're around. Like Mommy used to smile when you came home from work." That night, after Emma had fallen asleep, Marcus stood on his apartment balcony looking out at the city lights and confronting a truth he'd been avoiding. Somewhere along the way, his gratitude and respect for Alexandra Sterling had deepened into something else entirely. But what could he possibly offer someone like her? She was brilliant, beautiful, wealthy beyond imagination, and could have anyone she wanted. He was a construction worker playing dress-up in the corporate world, a single father with more heart than sophistication. Marcus's crisis of confidence came to a head during Sterling Industries' annual charity gala, a glittering affair held in the company's main conference facility. Alexandra had insisted that Marcus and Emma attend, and watching Alexandra work the room, elegant in a stunning black gown, commanding attention from politicians, celebrities, and industry titans, only reinforced his sense of not belonging in her world. "You look like you're about to bolt," a voice said beside him. Marcus turned to find Richard Hawthorne, one of Sterling Industries' board members and, according to office gossip, Alexandra's most persistent suitor. "Just not my usual scene," Marcus replied diplomatically. "I imagine not." Hawthorne's smile was cold. "Tell me, Thompson, what exactly are your qualifications for your current position? Because frankly, some of us on the board are wondering why Alexandra would hire someone so unpolished for such a critical role." Before Marcus could respond, a small hand slipped into his. "Daddy, Miss Alexandra is looking for you," Emma said, appearing at his side in the blue dress Alexandra had bought for her. She said something about the security check for the silent auction. As they walked away from Hawthorne, Emma looked up at her father with knowing eyes. "He wasn't being very nice, was he?" "No, sweetheart, he wasn't. Miss Alexandra says some people try to make others feel small because they feel small inside themselves." Marcus squeezed his daughter's hand, marveling not for the first time at her wisdom. Later that evening, after the gala had ended and the last guests had departed, Marcus found Alexandra in her office, having changed from her gown into jeans and a simple sweater. She looked younger somehow, more like the woman he'd pulled from a wrecked car in the desert. "Thank you for tonight," she said without looking up from the reports she was reviewing. Security was flawless. "Alexandra." Marcus's voice was quiet, but something in his tone made her look up. "I need to tell you something." She set down her papers, giving him her full attention. "Richard Hawthorne cornered me tonight. He made it pretty clear that some people think you made a mistake hiring me." Alexandra's expression hardened. "Richard Hawthorne is an ass who's been trying to undermine me since I took over from my father. What he thinks doesn't matter. But he's not wrong, is he? I don't belong in this world. I don't have an MBA or connections or—" Marcus gestured around the elegant office. "I fix things with my hands. I shop at discount stores and drive a pickup truck, and my idea of fine dining is taking Emma to the local pizza place." "So?" The simple question stopped Marcus short. "So?" Alexandra stood up, moving around her desk to face him directly. "So what, Marcus? So you're not polished enough for Richard Hawthorne? So you didn't go to Harvard Business School? So you choose to spend your free time with your daughter instead of networking at country clubs?" Her voice grew stronger, more certain. "Do you know what I see when I look at you?" Marcus shook his head, not trusting his voice. "I see a man who risked his life for a complete stranger. I see a father who's raised the kindest, smartest, most loving little girl I've ever met. I see someone who looks at me like I'm just Alexandra, not CEO Alexandra or Sterling Industries Alexandra or potential business opportunity Alexandra." She stepped closer. "I see the man who saved my life, and I don't just mean from those kidnappers." The space between them seemed to crackle with unspoken possibilities. Marcus found himself looking into Alexandra's green eyes and seeing not the intimidating CEO but the woman who had complimented his 8-year-old daughter's kindness, who remembered how he liked his coffee, who had trusted him with her safety and her company. "Alexandra," he began, but she placed a finger gently against his lips. "Let me finish," she said softly. "These past months working with you, getting to know Emma, being part of your lives, I've remembered what it feels like to be happy. Not successful, not accomplished, but genuinely happy. When I wake up in the morning, I look forward to coming to work, not because of deals or board meetings, but because I know I'll see you. Both of you." She took a shaky breath. "I know we come from different worlds. I know people like Richard Hawthorne will always question what a woman like me is doing with a man like you. But Marcus, you make me want to be the person you see when you look at me. You make me want to be worthy of the trust Emma shows me when she falls asleep on my office couch while you and I work late." Marcus felt his carefully constructed walls crumbling. "Alexandra, I'm in love with you," she said simply. "I'm in love with your integrity and your kindness and the way you put Emma first in everything you do. I'm in love with your calloused hands and your genuine smile and the fact that you've never once asked me for anything except the chance to keep me safe." The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility and fear. "I'm in love with you too," Marcus said finally, his voice rough with emotion. "I have been for months, but I didn't think. I couldn't imagine that I could love you back?" He nodded. Alexandra smiled, and in that smile Marcus saw not the polished CEO but the woman who had thanked him in the desert, who had offered him a new life, who had welcomed both him and Emma into her world with open arms. "Marcus Thompson," she said, reaching up to touch his face gently, "you are the best man I've ever known. If you think I'm too good for you, you have it exactly backwards." 6 months later, Marcus stood in the same desert where he'd first met Alexandra, but everything was different now. The small wedding ceremony was exactly what they'd both wanted: intimate, meaningful, focused on the people who mattered most. Emma stood beside him as his best woman, radiant in a pale yellow dress, clutching the rings they would exchange. Alexandra approached wearing a simple white sundress, her hair flowing free in the desert breeze, looking more beautiful than Marcus had ever seen her. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, but Marcus barely heard the words. He was too busy looking at the woman who had changed his life, who had seen something in him worth believing in, who had chosen to build a future with him and Emma. When it came time for vows, Alexandra spoke first. "Marcus, 6 months ago you saved my life in this desert. But the real rescue happened later, when you showed me what it means to live with purpose, to love without conditions, to find joy in the simple moments. You and Emma have given me a family, something I never thought I wanted and now can't imagine living without." She turned to Emma. "Emma, you've taught me that love multiplies when it's shared, that the best conversations happen over breakfast, and that being a family isn't about blood, it's about choosing each other every day. Will you let me be your stepmom?" Emma nodded solemnly. "Can I still call you Miss Alexandra sometimes?" "You can call me whatever feels right," Alexandra replied, laughing through her tears. When Marcus spoke his vows, his voice was steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "Alexandra, you took a chance on a man who had nothing to offer except his word and his heart. You gave me and Emma a future I never dared dream of. But more than that, you reminded me that love doesn't end when we lose someone, it just makes room for new love to grow alongside it." He looked out at their small gathering, Alexandra's parents who had flown in from New York, his own mother, a handful of close friends, and Detective Rodriguez who had become an unexpected friend through the trial proceedings. "I promise to spend every day earning the trust you've placed in me, protecting the family we're building, and loving you with everything I have." The house in Marin County was nothing like the sterile penthouse where Alexandra had lived before. It was warm and lived in, with Emma's artwork on the refrigerator, Marcus's work boots by the back door, and family photos covering every surface. Alexandra found Marcus in the backyard, teaching Emma how to change the oil in his pickup truck. It was a weekend ritual that never failed to amuse her. The CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company married to a man who insisted their daughter know how to take care of herself. "How's my favorite mechanic?" Alexandra asked, settling into the lawn chair Marcus had placed in the shade for her. "Almost done, Miss Alexandra," Emma called, her face smudged with grease but glowing with pride. "She's better at this than I was at her age," Marcus admitted, wiping his hands on a rag. "Might have to start bringing her to the office, let her redesign our security systems." Alexandra laughed, one hand resting on her still flat stomach. They hadn't told Emma about the baby yet, wanted to wait until they were past the first trimester. But the secret sat warm and bright between them. "Speaking of the office," she said, The board meeting went well this morning. Hawthorne finally tendered his resignation. Good riddance, Marcus replied, settling into the chair beside her. Man never did understand what this company was really about. And what's that? Marcus looked at Emma, who was now attempting to explain internal combustion engines to their patient golden retriever, and then at Alexandra, whose business acumen had grown the company by 40% in the 2 years since their marriage, all while maintaining the ethical standards that had made Sterling Industries a leader in corporate responsibility. Building something that lasts, he said simply. Something that makes the world a little bit better. That evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Emma chattering about her science project, Alexandra sharing stories from her day, Marcus quietly marveling at the life they'd built together, Alexandra thought about the chain of events that had brought them here. A kidnapping attempt gone wrong. A stranger who chose courage over safety. A little girl who saw the good in everyone. A CEO who remembered what really mattered. Sometimes the most important moments in life came disguised as disasters. Sometimes the person who saved you was the one who needed saving most. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, love found you in the middle of the desert and changed everything. Daddy, Emma said as Marcus tucked her into bed that night, do you think Mommy would have liked Miss Alexandra? Marcus considered the question seriously, the way he always did when Emma asked about Sarah. I think, he said finally, your mommy would have loved that we found someone who makes us laugh every day, who challenges us to be better people, and who thinks you're the most amazing kid in the world. But most of all, I think she'd be happy that we're happy. Emma nodded, satisfied. I think so too. Good night, Daddy. Good night, sweetheart. As Marcus turned off the light, he reflected on the journey that had brought them here. In the desert that day, he'd made a choice to help a stranger. He'd never imagined it would lead to this. A love story that had transformed all their lives, a family built on trust and chosen devotion, a future full of possibility. Outside, the California stars shone down on their house, blessing the family within, a single father who'd found love again, a CEO who'd discovered what really mattered, and a little girl who'd gained a mother and would soon become a big sister. In the master bedroom, Alexandra curled up against Marcus's chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For saving me. For loving me. For giving me Emma. For showing me that the best things in life aren't things at all. Marcus pressed a kiss to the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her hair, marveling at how right this felt, how complete their improbable family had become. Thank you, he replied, for seeing something in me worth saving. And in the quiet of their home, surrounded by love and the promise of tomorrow, they slept peacefully, knowing that sometimes the most beautiful stories begin with the most unlikely meetings, and that the best kind of love is the kind that makes everyone involved a better version of themselves. The desert had taken Sarah from him, but it had also given him Alexandra. Life had a strange way of balancing the scales, of healing old wounds with new love, of proving that even in the darkest moments, hope could bloom like a desert flower after rain. Marcus Thompson had learned that being a good man sometimes meant taking risks, that love could grow in the most unexpected places, and that the greatest treasure wasn't gold or money or success. It was the people who chose to stand by you when it mattered most. And somewhere in the house, in a frame on Emma's nightstand, a photo of her mother seemed to smile down on the family she would have loved, blessing the new chapter they were writing together, one day at a time.